All right. Like I mentioned, I'm Dan from onOne. I'm the senior product manager. I'm the guy who actually designs the perfect photo suite. And for those of you who don't know what the suite is, it's a standalone photo editing application that has all the tools that photographers need to make their images look great. Like I mentioned, it's a standalone application. That means you can use it all by itself, and it's integrated so that all of the modules or all the features that make it up work together. They're not just individual plugins. And you can use them wherever you work. You can use them inside of Photoshop or inside of Lightroom or inside of Aperture or on their own, or you can also set it up as a external editor in just about any application, even something like iPhoto. You can still send your images to it. Now, our image scientists and developers have been working really hard over the past year to come up with some really cool new technologies, and I'm very excited to show those to you today. And before we jump into that, I want to kind of explain the modular nature of the perfect photo suite. We build the suite based around modules for a good reason. If we look at other horizontal tools like Photoshop, they have a ton of different tools, and you only need a few of them at any given moment for the task that you're working on. All that other stuff just gets in your way. So instead, what we like to do are build specific tools for the task at hand and only give you the tools that are needed to accomplish that job. That way, you don't have to wade through a bunch of other tools that you don't need. It also lets you tweak and customize things so it works just right for the job that you're trying to do. And we're going to talk about all of these modules in turn. And again, I'll focus mostly on the new ones this morning. The first one I want to talk about, and this is actually a brand new module, is the new Browse module. It's a browser that gives you access to your photos really fast no matter where they live. So they could be on a hard drive on your computer, it could be a USB drive attached to it, it could be a network drive, so basically another computer within your network, or it could be an online storage service like Dropbox or the Apple Photo Stream or Microsoft SkyDrive or Google Drive, any of those services where you store your images. You can also view them through your browser as well. And the whole idea is to find those images quickly so that you can work on them inside the perfect photo suite. And it doesn't require a catalog. It's a pure browser. There's no database that sits behind it. So rendering thumbnails is very, very fast. The next module we want to talk about is Perfect Enhance. Perfect Enhance kind of works hand in hand with the browser. It's a new tool that gives you everything you need to make your image look better. So it's things like adjusting brightness and contrast, removing a color cast. There's a brand new tool called the Perfect Eraser, which we'll talk about for removing objects and distractions. And it also gives you the basic tools for sharpening and vignette, as well as some of the other basic tools for retouching and cropping your image. Now, it's a perfect place to start on your image if you don't use Lightroom or Aperture. Now, for those of you who do use Lightroom or Aperture, these two tools accomplish a lot of the same things that you would do in those tools. And the reason we've created them is not everybody in the world has one of those workflow solutions like Lightroom or Aperture. And if you have those tools, they're great tools. Continue to use them. There are some unique things in both of these modules that I'll point out, which can make them useful to anybody. All right, let me just show you a couple quick examples of what you can do with Perfect Enhance, then we'll jump into actually show you how it works. Here's an image. It's off color, has a color cast, it's lacking in contrast. Using Perfect Enhance, we can correct the color, boost up the color, and remove some distractions very quickly. Or on an image like this that's underexposed and soft and off color, we can quickly remove the distractions, lighten up those shadows, correct the color, bring back the detail in the clouds, and enhance the detail. So here we are inside of the Perfect Photo Suite 8. Now keep in mind the version that we're looking at today is a really early development version. The suite won't be shipping until November 26th. The version we're looking at is about 3 months early of its ship date. So what we're looking at today isn't the final quality and it's not the final appearance or certainly the final speed of what you're going to see in the shipping version. So I apologize if I stumble across a couple bugs today. The browser, let's kind of go over how it works here. The first area we want to look at on the left is called the sources pane. The sources pane keeps track of all of those different sources. Those could be your cloud services like Dropbox or Google Drive or PhotoStream or SkyDrive, all of your hard drives, all of your network drives, and you can also create what are called favorites. So if there's a certain folder on a certain drive where you keep all your images, like I do, you can mark that as a favorite and you can access it in a single click. So right here, I've created a favorite for my demo images, and when I click on that, it'll take me to that demo images folder. And then inside of that folder, it will show any other subfolders that are inside of it in the folders pane. So if I was to navigate to my hard drive, it'll show me all of the folders in my hard drive. Or if I went to Dropbox, it'll show me all the folders that I have on Dropbox. So it allows you to navigate through those. And as I change my folder structure, you'll see on the right that the images in the folder will change. And then below that, we also keep track of all the recent files that you've opened. So if there's one you want to get back to quickly, you can just click on it to get to a file you've used a lot. We'll also, when you select an image, give you information about it. We'll tell you about when it was shot, how big it is, what the camera was that was used to capture it, and if there's GPS metadata embedded into it, there'll be a button where you can actually launch a browser and actually see where that image was taken on a map. Of course, you'll see thumbnails in here. You can change the size of those thumbnails with the thumbnail slider, and you can select multiple images and send them to a module so that you can actually perform a small batch or a complex workflow on a multiple images now. I want to actually select an image and I'm going to send it to a module. To do that, you can just click on it up here in the module selector, or you can right click on it and send it to the module you want. I'm going to send this one to Perfect Enhance. All right, here we are inside of Perfect Enhance. On the left, there are presets. I'm just going to close that drawer up. And in the middle, you'll see the image, and on the right are controls. Now, Enhance is designed so that a photographer of any user level can have good results out of it. And we start by showing you the quick fixes pane. This gives you access to the most common image adjustments in a very simplified layout. At the top, there's an auto contrast and an auto color button. When I click on those, it'll set the black and white points to give me a good contrast range, and then it'll try to detect a color cast and automatically remove it. Now this image, it'll remove a little bit of that color cast, but because there's so much red in the dress, it still leaves a little bit of a color cast, and I'll show you how to correct that here in just a moment. Then below that, there's buttons for brightness and contrast, vibrance, color or temperature, detail, and vignette. And all you do is you just click on what you want it to do. So in this case, maybe I want to increase the vibrance a little bit. So I'm just going to click on increase vibrance, maybe a little bit more detail. There we go. And maybe we'll add just a little vignette. There we go. Just like that. So for a basic user, it gives you everything you need in a push button interface. You don't have to know anything about all the complicated sliders that you'd see in a more advanced tool. Now, however, for an advanced user, we still give you all those additional controls that you need. Let's walk through some of these panes. First is color and tone adjustments. When I roll that down, you'll see there's controls for brightness and contrast, as well as shadows, highlights, whites, and blacks. Detail, that's our local contrast method to increase the detail of the contrast in the image. It's different than sharpening. And then adjustments for correcting color or enhancing color. I'm going to use the gray dropper tool. I'm going to click on something in the scene that I know is supposed to be gray, in this case, the water down at the bottom. And you can see how that removes that extra green color cast that was left over caused by her dress. And that gives us a nice, clean, neutralized image. Below that, let me roll this one up. There are options for adding a vignette and adding sharpening. And in both of these panes, there's an advanced roll-up. I'm just going to hide those for a second so you can see the preset buttons at the top. These preset buttons make it quick to add a vignette or add the correct amount of sharpening. So if I just click on the subtle vignette button, it'll add the correct vignette that I want. And let's say I want to sharpen it for screen output. I can just select the screen output option. But again, for advanced users, both of these can be rolled down and adjusted. For example, for vignette, there's lots of preset vignettes, or you can fine tune all of the settings on your own. The brightness, the size, the feather, even the blending mode, and there's a new centering tool so you can change where the center of the vignette is. So if you want to locate the vignette to the upper left, you could do that, for example. In the sharpening pane, same idea, you have more options. There's sharpening presets built in for different printer types and media types, as well as for online sharing. And there's controls for protecting the highlights, the shadows, and the skin, so you make sure you don't over sharpen areas that you don't want to add sharpening to. Then over on the left-hand side, we give you a collection of the most basic tools that you need to make your image look better. There's a crop tool, the retouch tool, a red eye removing tool, and my favorite, the new perfect eraser. Perfect Eraser is like the retouch brush on steroids. It will automatically remove distracting objects. It could be a person, it could be a road sign, it could be a power line, it could be just about anything. In this case, I'm going to use it to remove a few of the distractions on her dress. There's the tie from her dress on her neck. I'm just going to paint across that, and it will automatically fill that in with the correct detail and texture to completely retouch it all in a single step. Think of it like the clone stamp brush, but you don't have to tell it where to clone from. It automatically figures that out. Let's remove the zipper on her dress right there. Now these have both been pretty small areas. Let's do something a little bit bigger. Let's tackle the water down here in the bottom right-hand corner. You notice the water is nice and smooth on the rest of the image, but we have some distractions down here. I'm just going to grab that perfect eraser. I'm just going to paint over what I don't want. And again, it's going to automatically fill it in. It's going to maintain the lines just like that. There we go. That's how quick and easy it is to use the perfect eraser. Let's take a look at the before and the after. There's our original image, and there's our results. Just using a little bit of Perfect Enhance. And of course, if we apply this image, it's going to return back to the browser where we started from. I'm going to jump out of Perfect Enhance and let's take a peek at some of the new changes in Perfect Layers. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with layers, layers gives you the power of a layered workflow without having to have Photoshop. It lets you combine multiple images together, control each image as its own layer, adjust its opacity, its position, its size, things like that. So you can create composites, you can swap heads, you can replace guys, you can do all sorts of things. It also has that new perfect eraser in it for removing distracting objects. Here's a couple examples of what you can do with layers. Combining these three images together to create one final composite image, or merging multiple exposures of the same subject together to create one finished shot. And we're actually going to show you how to do an image just like this one right now. Let me just cancel out of Perfect Enhance. We'll go back to Layers here. And I'm going to use the built-in mini browser on the left-hand side. The mini browser is like a miniature version of the big browser. It's great if you are working layers, you already have a file open and you're just looking for another file to add as a layer to it. I'm going to go to the files that I want to work on right here. I'll use the Quick View browser just so you guys can take a little closer look at that. The Quick View browser is built into every module of the suite and it lets you take a closer look at files or presets before you open them. I'm going to go ahead and open the darker version. Now, if you're used to perfect layers, a couple things you'll notice that have changed. There's now file tabs across the top. You can have multiple documents open at the same time, and you can copy and paste layers and masks between open documents. The other thing we can do is we can drag and drop files to add them as layers. So I'm just going to drag and drop another file right on top of it to add it as another layer. Now I could open that as a new document into its own tab, or like I did right there, I just decided to choose to open it as a new layer. So here in layers, we've got a dark copy and a light copy. I'm going to show you how to blend these two together using the new masking bug. Now, those of you who have an earlier version of the suite, you're probably familiar with the masking bug already. It kind of looks like a little insect in the middle, and it's a flexible gradient mask tool for blending layers or blending effects together. We've made some big changes to the masking bug with this version of the suite. The first thing you'll notice is up here in the tool options bar, there's now a preset pop-up where you can actually access presets for the masking bug. So it will pick the right shape and the right relative position for you automatically. So for example, if I pick the linear top option, because I want to mask the top, it will add a masking bug. You'll notice that the shape of the masking bug looks different now than it used to. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The next are the shape options. Let's go ahead and talk about what those shape options are and kind of how the masking bug works. The easiest way to understand the masking bug is just to turn the mask preview to grayscale so you can actually see what the mask that it's creating in real time looks like. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the concept of a mask is something that attaches to a layer and will hide part of that layer temporarily. Anything that is black on the mask will hide the layer and reveals whatever layers are underneath it. There's three different shapes for the masking bug. The first one that we're looking right now is called the gradient shape. This is actually new in this version, and it looks quite a bit different. To use it is much more straightforward. Rather than having to pull on the legs or twist the antennas of the bug, you just manipulate the lines directly. So to move it, you just click in the middle and you can move it around. There's a little rotation handle that sticks out. You can just rotate it by grabbing that handle. If you hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, it'll lock it to 45-degree increments so that you can make sure you always get it straight up and down or straight horizontal. And then to change the feather, what we call the transition between white and black, you just grab these feather lines and you move them in or out. Now that's the gradient shape. That's the one that I use the most. It's the one that is great for doing a graduated filter or for blending a sky into an image. But there's a couple other shapes. There's the radial shape. This used to be called round, and it creates a round or elliptical shape. To change its size, just grab the solid line and pull it in. You can change its shape by using the dots. So if we want to make it more of an ellipse or a circle, you can change the shape. Of course, there's that rotation handle for rotating it, and just grab the feather line to control how hard that transition is. So very straightforward, very natural way of working. The round shape is great if you want to use it to create a vignette. So if you want to selectively darken the edges of your image, it's a handy tool for that. The third shape is the reflected gradient. This is the one that most of you are probably used to seeing, where it was originally created for focal point, because we want to create something that looks like a tilt shift lens, or we want to create a slice of the image that's in focus. In this case, the middle area is black. Grab the solid lines to change the thickness of the completely masked area, and then use the feather lines to control how quickly it transitions. All right, let me show you how to use it in practice here. I'm going to reset this. I'm going to change my mask mode back to all layers, and let's just grab that linear top preset. There we go. I'm just going to move the bug so that the center, that's where the middle of the transition occurs, is about the edge of the water, and then I'll just stretch that feather line out a little bit. There we go. So that creates a fairly natural transition between these two exposures. I get the best of both worlds. I get the dark sky and I get the lighter foreground. I didn't have to have a 7-stop bracket. I didn't have to use fancy HDR software. I could just do it with 2 images right here inside of Perfect Layers. Now, one thing you might notice is the top of my little motorcyclist's head is starting to become a little semi-transparent. He actually is only in one layer. He's not in both of them. So we'll just use the regular masking bug. I'm going to set the perfect brush option on, and I'm just going to paint his helmet back in to make sure that he stays in the correct opacity, just like that. There we go. Now we'll merge these 2 layers together. I'll just click on the merge button, or if you're used to the Photoshop keyboard shortcuts of Control E or Command E, you can do that to merge those 2 layers together. And I want to show you a little bit more of the perfect eraser while I'm here. That new perfect eraser works great for removing even larger objects. I want to get rid of this ugly stump in the foreground in the water. All I do is I just paint over it. You want to do it all in a single step. You don't want to erase it bit by bit, and it will automatically erase it and connect the lines together. Now notice it created a little bit of a repeating pattern right there. Let's just clean that up a little bit. There we go. And you can use it multiple times to clean up repeating patterns, or if it doesn't give you quite the result you want, you can just paint over it again. Let's get rid of this stump over here now too. There we go. And you know, while we're at it, let's get rid of this tree up here in the corner. There we go, just like that. So a very fast and efficient way of removing distractions. Now, it's not the only tool for removing distracting objects. It's probably the most powerful one, though. There's also the retouch brush, which is great for smaller things like acne, and you can control its opacity and its feather, which makes it great for retouching skin. And of course, there's the traditional clone stamp tool, which is the most powerful, the one that's the most user guided, but it's also the one that requires the most interaction as well. So 3 different tools to help you remove objects and distractions here inside of the suite. All right, that is Perfect Layers. I'm going to jump out of here and we'll take a look next at Perfect Effects. So Perfect Effects sees some big changes in Suite 8 as well. And to me, Perfect Effects is the one that I actually use the most. To me, it's the most powerful part of the suite. Now, those of you who have used effects in the past know that the effects, the items that live on the left, most of those are presets, which means you can't really adjust them. You can kind of control their global opacity, and that's about it. And that means that we have to make a lot of effects to give you the options that you'd want. So, for example, we have to make a warm and a cool and a normal version of every effect because you don't have the control to do that on your own. We've gone away from that model, and now everything is filter-based instead. So there's twice as many filters as there were before, with fewer individual presets, but each filter is completely adjustable. So instead of having to have 12 presets, for example, for cross-process, we could have 4 presets, and each preset is infinitely adjustable. Of course, you can still stack your presets together. You can still paint them in or out with the masking brush or the masking bug. And I mentioned that we've moved focal point inside of Perfect Effects now. Those of you who love focal point, don't worry. Everything you can do inside of focal point, you can still do inside of Perfect Effects. Actually, even more. We've added a motion blur component to it now. So you can actually add some distortion. So you can actually make it look like things were moving at the same time. So it's great for sports. So let's show you a couple examples of what you can do with Perfect Effects. It's great if you want to create an HDR look on an image that isn't actually shot in HDR, Or if you want to recreate the retro vintage looks that are very popular in applications like Instagram, it has all of the vintage and borders that you need to do that. Again, we've moved focal point inside of Perfect Effects to give you ultimate control over your depth of field after the shot. And the great thing about putting it inside of effects is you can use all of the other things in effects along with it. It's not very often that you just use focal point on its own. Focal point is just one effect in a larger effects workflow. So now putting all the effects together lets you create a preset so you can actually use focal point as part of a unified preset. And it also contains tons of textures and borders and frames, giving your image a perfect finishing touch as well. All right, I'm going to jump into effects and let's show you a little bit about it. I'm going to grab an image from Lightroom because I think it's important to remind you that the suite, even though it's a standalone application, does integrate into Lightroom and Aperture and Photoshop, and you can use them in a seamless workflow. So I'm going to grab an image that I want to work on here inside of Lightroom, and I'm just going to go to Plugin Extras and send it to the module of the suite that I want. In this case, I'm going to send it to Perfect Effects. It will grab that image, it'll make a copy if necessary, it'll send it to the suite and opens it up in the module that I want to work in. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that the categories have changed a little bit. These are the actual, oops, let's get to the right one here. These are the actual filters that are built into Perfect Effects now. Now, this version of Perfect Effects we're looking at today is still very early, so not all of the filters are there. There's still, you'll notice there's some buttons that don't have the correct graphics, and there's some roll-ups that aren't being rolled up yet. So excuse the appearance and excuse the performance for today, but I do want to show you one of the new filters that I'm really excited about. It's called Dynamic Contrast. Dynamic contrast allows you to control the contrast in the image, but not in a clumsy global fashion, but based on the size of the contrast range. So, for example, when you adjust contrast in an image normally, everything gets the same adjustment. You're basically trying to make darks darker and lights lighter to increase the contrast. And whether it's a very small area of contrast, like a tree branch that's very thin, versus a big area of contrast, like a cloud against a blue sky, they get the same amount of contrast adjustment. With the new dynamic contrast tool, you can control the amount of adjustment based on the size of the objects in your scene. So when I grab something like the large contrast and bring it up, you'll see that only the largest edges of contrast are affected. So things that are very dark next to very light, things like the areas around the lights or the windows or the dark railing underneath the banister, we'll see the effect there, but it doesn't enhance the small details. If we look at like the filigree around the windows, those were unaffected. Now when I adjust the micro or the small contrast, those areas will start to pop up. Let's zoom up to 100 so we can take a little closer look at this in action. So there's with no micro contrast added. Let's crank the micro contrast up so you can see that effect. It really brings up all that fine detail in the shot. Let's go back to fit to screen and we'll take a look at the before and the after on this. Let's give it just a second for the preview to update. There we go. So here's the before image and there's the after image. If you're familiar with clarity or tonal contrast, it's the same idea, just taken to 11. Below, there's some additional controls. You can bring back information in the highlights and shadows. If you need to adjust the highlight and shadow ranges, I'm going to bring back just a touch of the shadows to make sure that I can see in those deep dark shadows, and I'm going to bring my vibrance up just a little bit too to enhance that color. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. And now let's add a vignette on top of it. So I'll just click on the plus button in my stack to add a new effect layer. And we'll add a vignette. Now the vignette, you'll notice it kind of looks like the vignette inside of Perfect Enhance now. There's presets at the top for the most common settings. I'm going to use a strong vignette. I'm going to change the style to subtle. And you'll notice that there's a new tool to set the center of the vignette. So rather than being set in the middle of the image and all the sides of the image being darkened equally, we can control its position. In this case, I really only want to darken the bottom and the right-hand side of the image. I don't want to darken the upper and the left. So I'm just going to move the vignette up to the left a little bit, and that will pull the vignette off of the top and the left-hand side and focus it just on the bottom and the right-hand side. Let's take a look at the overall before and after here. There's my original image. And There's the results using a little bit of perfect effects. Now you can stack multiple effects like you used to. You can still blend them using the masking brush or the masking bug, and you can save a stack as a preset so that you can use it over and over again. All right, let me jump out of here real fast. See, the next thing we're going to talk about is I'm going to quickly show you guys perfect black and white. Black and white makes it easy to recreate the timeless look of black and white masters. I'll actually show you how to create an image like this from Yosemite, or it's also great for creating vintage darkroom looks like this ambrotype. So I'm just going to select an image I want to work on, and we'll send it to black and white. All right. When your image opens up in black and white, it'll automatically convert it to black and white with a default setting. That default setting is generally fairly conservative. We'll maintain all the highlights and shadows. It means it's kind of flat. On the right, you've got all the control panes to adjust everything, including the brightness and contrast, the color filtration that's used to influence the tonality for different parts of the image. You can add a glow, film grain, toner. Everything that you could have done in the darkroom are controlled on these panes on the right. On the left are the presets, and we've worked very hard to create presets that faithfully reproduce a lot of different darkroom techniques and different film types. They're divided up based on time period. I'm going to go into the 20th century classic category and pick a preset from there. You can roll down and see your image of the presets on it, or you can use the new quick view browser. That's what I use almost all the time now. There's a little button right here at the end of each category or at the bottom of the browser that you can click on, which will launch the quick view browser. This will show you your image with the presets on it, and it fills the whole screen. You can use the plus and minus keys on your keyboard to change the number of rows and columns. So you can give a larger survey view, and then when you find something that you're interested in, you can just hit the plus key to zoom in on it to find the one you want. If you've marked any as favorites as well, you'll see your favorite flag in the corner. This is actually the one I'm going to use right here called Ansel in the Valley. When I add that, I'm just going to close the preset drawer on the left just by grabbing the handle and pushing it so that it closes. That gives us a little bit more room to work. Now this will give me a strong red filter looking black and white conversion. So my sky gets darker, the greens in the trees get lighter, and it's boosted my contrast a bit as well. What I want to do is I want to bring back a little bit of detail in those shadows. So I'm going to use my shadow slider just to bring up a bit of that detail. And I'm going to use the targeted brightness tool. Over here on the left, there's a bunch of great built-in tools that you can use to adjust portions of the image. There's a brightness brush. Think of it like burning and dodging. You can lighten and darken areas. There's a contrast tool, a detail tool for adding additional detail in areas, and the targeted brightness tool. This is one I love. I just click on the targeted brightness tool, click on the area that you want to change its brightness of, and then move the cursor left or right. So I want to take the sky and I want to make it even darker. So I just click in the sky and I drag my mouse to the left, and you see how the sky gets darker. If I drag it to the right, the sky gets brighter. I want the sky to be pretty dark, so I'm just going to drag that down a bit. And I want to take the green in the trees and I want to make the trees a little bit darker as well. So I'm just going to click in the green of the trees and I'll drag to the left, and you'll see how this will take those green in the trees and we'll darken those a bit as well. There we go. That's looking better. Now I want to enhance the waterfall that's coming down the rocks right over here. I can use the contrast brush to increase the contrast. That will make the white of the waterfall whiter and the wet rocks around it darker so that it appears more black, and that will make the waterfall pop out visually more for us. There we go, just like so. Then maybe to finish this, we'll add a border. I want to go to the borders, and I want to add one that looks like a 4x5 film edge. So we'll go to the film category, and let's pick the large format. So it looks like a 4x5 film edge, and there we go. Let's turn the preview on and off so you can see before and after. So there's the original shot, very typical tourist shot from the tunnel in Yosemite, shot in late afternoon, to one that looks like a black and white master shot just by using a little bit of perfect black and white. All right, let's take a look at our next module. Next one we want to talk about is perfect portrait. Perfect Portrait is great for automatically retouching your images. It'll find every face in your scene. For each face, it'll find the features, the eyes and the mouth, and will automatically retouch those and enhance them for you as well. And if you have multiple people in your scene, it will find each face, and each face can have its own settings so that you can have young and old or male and female next to each other and retouch them differently. I'm going to give you guys a quick example of how to use Perfect Portrait. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail on this one. I'm just going to select an image here in Lightroom that I want to work on, and I'm going to send it to Perfect Portrait. And when Portrait opens, it'll automatically find all the faces. It'll put a box around all of them. Of course, we only have one face in this scene. Just click on the face you want to work on. So click inside of the box, and we'll zoom in and we'll show you the control points for the eyes and the mouth. We do our best job of finding those for you automatically, but I find that you typically want to give them a little bit of an adjustment. So in this case, we miss the top of her mouth quite a bit. So I'm just going to adjust those control points. It's important that you do this because these control points set the regions that are used for adjusting the eyes and the mouth, and it also protects the eyes and the mouth from getting any smoothing when we do the skin correction as well. So make those adjustments, then just hit the hide controls button up here in the corner. There we go. I'm just going to toggle the preview on and off so you can see a before and after just using the default settings. So there's before and there's after. A nice natural subtle retouch. In a lot of cases, I would just hit apply and I'd be done. There's no need to do any more. But let me show you a few more things you can do. One thing I did notice is that her hair started to get a little soft up here because it's close to her skin color. So we can use the skin refinement brush, which is automatically selected. I'm just going to make sure the mode is set to not skin, and then I'm just going to paint across her hair very quickly in this upper right-hand side to make sure that the hair doesn't get soft. You can then control the amount and type of retouching, color correction, and eye and mouth enhancement. You can do that manually, or you can create a preset or use some of the built-in presets. I'm going to use a built-in preset. We'll just bring up the female category. She has kind of shiny skin, so I'm going to use the shine reducer preset. There we go. This will increase the shine reduction and will even out the color of the skin as well. I think it may have evened it out just a little more than I like. There we go. It'll color correct it and enhances the eyes and the mouth. Let's take a look at a side-by-side preview so you can see the difference here. The original on the left and the results on the right. There we go. That's Perfect Portrait. All right. Let's go back to Lightroom and we'll show you the next one. Next one we want to look at is Perfect Mask. And I'm going to pause for just a minute before we go into Mask to answer a few more questions. Perfect Mask gives you all the masking and selection tools that you need without having Photoshop. So if you're just using Lightroom or Aperture as your main workflow tool, you can create complex selections, you can replace backgrounds, you can replace skies, all with Perfect Mask. We even include background images with it to help you out. Here's some examples of what you can do. We can take this girl and we can take her from an outside shot and put her inside the gym, or we can change the skies in images very easily. So if it's a white cloudy day or a boring blue sky, we can add clouds very quickly. All right, so let's move on. And we're going to talk now about Perfect Mask real fast. So with Mask, let me just grab an image that we can change a background on. I just select the image I want to work on. I'm going to send it to Mask. And when you send it to Mask, it's actually going to send it to Perfect Layers to start. Layers and Mask work hand in hand. It's very important that you use layers first, because what you want to do is you want to set up the background that you want to put under your image, or set up that composite before you do the masking. Because if you just mask against transparency, you can't really tell if the results you're creating are going to work with your new background. That's really important because if you're going from a light background to a dark background or vice versa, the amount of masking and what you have to do might vary. With this image, I want to take this little girl, I want to get rid of this boring kind of flat colored background and put it into a more vivid colored outside background, one that will really pop with her shirt. So I need to go find a new background. Luckily, there's a bunch that come with the suite. They live in the Extras tab here inside of Perfect Layers. You notice that there's sections for backgrounds, borders, and textures. These are all provided for free as part of the suite, and we add more of these as time goes on. You can download them for free as loyalty rewards from our website. I'm going to go into the backgrounds category. It will show me different categories of backgrounds. I've got inside and outside and studio backgrounds and walls. I want to make this look outside, so we'll go into the outside category, and it'll show us all of the different outside backgrounds that we supply. And I'm going to use this kind of green out of focus bokeh pattern. There we go. I'm just going to make it a little bit larger, and I'm just going to move it over. There we go. So that allows me to position it where I want, and then I just need to make sure that my layer I want to mask is on top of it. So we're going to remove this background and put her into this background. We'll click on the mask module. It'll open up in mask, and what it's going to do first is it's going to segment the image. What that does is it looks at the image, it looks for similar colored and textured areas that are next to each other and kind of coalesces them together into segments. This makes masking much faster. Let me show you what that segment view looks like. So you can see the whole sky has been reduced to just a handful of segments. And that means when we go to work on it using the drop tool, all I have to do is just kind of make a lazy little stroke through the background, and it'll automatically remove that entire side of the image. Same thing up here and down on this side of the image. So in 3 quick, imprecise brushstrokes, I've masked most of the image already. And as long as it has a fairly hard edge like her shirt and her hand, you were done. When you get to an indefined edge like hair or smoke or fog, that's where we'll use the refine brush, the tool that sits right underneath the drop brush. And with a refine brush, you just paint over those indeterminate areas, and Perfect Mask will look at the colors in the background that it's gotten rid of, and it'll look in the colors that are inside of the blue stroke that it knows it wants to keep, and it will compare them and remove the background just like that. Let's take a look at the grayscale mask that we're actually generating. You can see how the hair is now semi-transparent and blends naturally with that new background. And when we apply our results and it goes back to perfect layers, we're adding this as a layer mask. So the image isn't destroyed at all. It's totally non-destructive on the image. We can continue to refine and edit that mask, and anything that we put behind it will show through it. So for example, if I grab that background layer and I move it around, you'll see how it moves through the hair. So there we go. That's Perfect Mask. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that you can use Perfect Mask with any of the other modules in the suite. You can create these complex masks, and when you send them to another module like Perfect Effects, for example, it'll only work on the unmasked area of the image. So you can make very precise selections and then perform operations on them inside of the suite. It's one of the great features that a lot of people don't use in the suite. All right. I think I have one more to show you. Actually, there's Perfect Resize. I'm not going to show this one to you guys. If you're familiar with Genuine Fractals, you already know about Perfect Resize. It's the industry standard when it comes to resizing your image. It lets you crop and resize them in a single step and do everything you need to prepare for printing. That could be adding the correct amount of sharpening for the size and type of printing that you're doing, adding gallery wrap wings to it if you're printing on canvas, or tiling it if you're making a mural and you're printing on a smaller printer. It maintains greater sharpness and detail than anything out there. This is a comparison of the same image blown up 400% on the left with Photoshop and 400% on the right using Perfect Resize. You can see how it just maintains those edges and details better than anything out there. I do have one more module that I want to show you. It's kind of a bonus module. It's the new Perfect Batch module. Perfect Batch makes it really easy to do batch processing with multiple images. And this could be something as simple as just adding your watermark or converting it from one file type to another, or you can create a complex workflow and save it as a preset so you can perform it over and over again. I'm going to show you an example of how I use it. I'm going to start in the Browse module inside of the suite, and I'm going to grab a few images, and let's say I want to take these 4 images at the bottom and I want to get them ready to go to my blog. For my blog, I need to make them smaller JPEGs. I need to put my border on them. I need to add my logo and make sure they're the right file size and file type and bit depth. Now I can make a selection here in the Browse module. I could also do this from Lightroom or from Aperture. I can select a group of images and send it to the new batch processor. With the batch processor, the top and the bottom are the source and the destination. And between the source and the destination, you can insert any module you want in any order that you want. So let's work from the top to the bottom. In the source section, it's automatically selected the source to selected items because I sent it a selection from the Browse module. I could also change that to folder instead and point it towards a folder that I want to use to batch process. Then below that, you click right here where it says click to add a module, and you can then insert any of the modules that you want to add. Now it automatically remembers the last thing that you did. So it already has my workflow remembered. The first thing I need to do is I need to resize my images for the web. These are really big images. They wouldn't be appropriate for a website. So I'm going to resize those using Perfect Resize. And I could use a preset that's in Perfect Resize, or I can just type in the size that I want. I want these to be a maximum of 700 pixels on their long edge, and I only need 72 dpi. Then I need to add a watermark to them. Actually, before the watermark, let's add a border. So I'm just going to click here where it says add a module, and I'm going to add a border using Perfect Effects. There we go. You can see how I've inserted that as a new step in the workflow. Let's go and grab a border. Let's go to the film category. Let's say I want to add that one. There we go. I could even check the pause on first image option. That'll let me adjust the settings for each effect, and then it'll use that same setting for all the other images in my batch. Then I'm going to add a watermark. Now you notice it's remembered my watermark settings. It's even remembered my watermark file. So let me just make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. There's my onOne logo. I'm just going to put it down here in the bottom right-hand corner of my image. I can control its position, its size, its inset from the edge, and its opacity. Let's make the size a little bit smaller. There we go. And the last step is determining where those files go. Now I could overwrite the original files. I don't want to do that in this case. I want to send them to a folder. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Here we go. We'll put it into a new subfolder called blog. I want to make sure they're saved as JPEG files. I'm going to make them sRGB. I only need about 80 quality. And at the end of the name, I want to add the word blog. So I'm going to leave the current file name, and then I'm going to add a text field to it that's called blog. So it'll be the original file name dash blog. All right, let's hit go and see what happens. So it should only take a minute here. It'll open each file, runs through that entire workflow, and will output it to my desktop. And any of these chains of events that we create in that batch module, you can save it as a preset. So you can create your own saved workflows. And a workflow could be something as simple as, I just want to size these images to a certain size, just using Perfect Resize, or I just want to convert from one file type to another to something more complex like I just illustrated here. There we go. And it will automatically show me the folder of where those were saved. Here's those 4 images. You can see they've been sized down to 700 pixels. It's put my border and my logo on them automatically, ready to be uploaded to my website, just like that. So a huge time saver right inside of the suite. So let's review what we've talked about today for Perfect Photo Suite 8. There's the new Browse module, which allows you to find your images no matter where they live. The Enhance module for correcting color and removing distractions. The Batch processor. We've also talked a little bit about the new adjustable filters inside of Perfect Effects. So double the number of filters that you used to have, all of them infinitely adjustable. Some of those new filters include the dynamic contrast that I showed you. There's a new HDR look filter, a new portrait enhancer, a new vintage, grunge, and antique filters as well. There's the new masking bug, which makes it much easier to use, including that new gradient shape. There's the perfect eraser for removing distractions and blemishes. And we've moved the lens blur technology from focal point inside of Perfect Effects. Now at onOne Software, we are focused on photography. Everything we build is by photographers for photographers, and it's important to us that we get things done the way that you want them done. That's why we have our labs website where you can go to it and we'll tell you what we're working on for the future, and you can tell us what we should do to make them better for you and give us ideas. Everything we build is for photographers. We're not building search engine tools. We're not building things for graphic designers. We are photographers. That's all that we care about. We also want you guys to have your hands on the new public beta, which will be coming out in October. This will give you your hands on the suite in advance of its final release. So you can go to our website and sign up to be a beta tester. We also offer free training programs and webinars, just like the one you're viewing today. We also have free monthly customer loyalty rewards. For those of you guys who own the suite, and I think that's most of you out there, you know that every month you get an email from us with additional presets or textures or backgrounds that you can use with the suite. Over the last year, we've supplied over 300 additional pieces of content to our users just to thank you for being customers. We also give you free updates for the life of the suite. Now, that doesn't just mean compatibility updates, we actually add new valuable features during the life of that product. For you guys who have Suite 7, you know that you received the Quick View browser and the Perfect Brush as part of the 7.5 update at no charge. We also have free US and UK based technical support. Actual people that you can call and talk to. They speak English at least as well as I do, and they're product experts, and they'll help you get answers to your questions. There's a 30-day money back guarantee on everything that we offer. And best of all, you own the software. It's not a monthly fee that you have to continue to pay. You pay for it once and you own it.